But so tell me a little about the book.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I felt very different than most people around me. At least in the sense that like I didn't like the same things that they liked. My gender norms were like way off, and obviously as a 3 or 4 year old, you don't understand always what that means in the moment. Except I realized like I didn't like the same things. I didn't like sports and video games really. I was really into arts and crafts and like baking, and like my mom bought me an easy bake oven when I was really little in preschool. And so I was like supported even in not being like my brothers or my friends or the other males around me, but it always made me feel different. And then by the time I was 6, I had my first thoughts of ending my own life. Not really sure where those came from. They were like original thought. Like it wasn't like I had seen that play out a lot around me or anything like that or seen on TV. It was really just something that I felt this sorrow and this longing to not be here anymore on this planet. Probably from feeling so different and disconnected. And then right around that time is when I started hearing, or even before, started hearing this like anti-LGBTQ rhetoric from certain churches or religious organizations. Specifically, my part of my family was from rural Tennessee, and a lot of them, went to churches that said, being LGBTQ, being gay was a sin and that you'd go to hell. And even though I didn't know that I was like gay or in the LGBT community at that moment, I knew that I was different. And by the time I started to know what that was, 8 or 9 years old, when I was like, I think I'm gay or bisexual or pansexual or whatever, I'd already had a lot of that programming that LGBTQ is bad, and obviously, felt this disconnect with that, and then moved farther and farther away from my relationship with the divine, my relationship with God or the creator, whatever word you want to use, universal energy, even Gaia, which means essentially Mother Nature. I felt disconnected from all of that because I was told or taught or heard that meant if you were LGBTQ plus, it meant that you weren't loved in the same way that everyone else was. And on top of that, with the gender norms and other things, and kind of feeling like I didn't fit in, and never felt, even when I had friends or had people to be around, I just never felt like I fit in and never felt like I could be myself. So by the time I was a teenager, I started using drugs and alcohol. I started self-mutilating. I had suicide attempts. I eventually got on hard drugs, and that's where the book comes in. So my drug dealer brought me to God is the story of literally my drug dealer in the moment reconnecting me with God, with that divine that I had felt when I was a really little child. And the cool part about that is that it was just a conversation. It was just her sharing her story around faith with me that then allowed me to get to a place to write this book that I can share my story in hopes that it helps other people share their story. So it's like this ripple that she created just by authentically storytelling and sharing her story with me. Then I was able to share my story and have a story, have a life, because it literally saved my life. And as they say, the rest is history. So I'll let you ask more questions, because I'm sure you have more things to dive in about. I don't want to tell the whole story right now.
Okay, well, you can tell me a little bit. So there'll be little bits of everything, so it doesn't be so long. Yes, I don't know. Let's see here. So what is your addiction? Like
So I was addicted to, I would say, alcohol, marijuana, hard drug at the end. So I was addicted to all like pain pills or anti-anxiety, Adderall, any type of stimulant, caffeine, cigarettes, like everything. And by the end of my addiction, when it was at its worst, it was opioids. So I was addicted to pain pills, particularly pain pills that I snorted. So that was my drug of choice and how I chose to take it. But it was really everything from the time I was like 12 or 13 and started drinking. My first drink at 12, my first getting drunk at 13. It led to a 10-year stint with addiction, really bad. And then the right after I got sober, like from hard drugs, we got clean from that, or was working in recovery in that area, then I still smoked and drank for about a year after that, roughly. And so it's been over 8 years now, completely sober, 9 years from the hard stuff. So I'm going on the 10-year mark coming up for my recovery, which is really exciting. Actually, my 10 year will be in a few months in February, from hard drugs at least. So I haven't touched any hard drugs since then. And then after my 9 year mark is in the summer, so that will be this coming summer in July. So I just had my 8 year mark for completely sober from all kind of stimulants, including caffeine, etc. So it's definitely been a journey, that's for sure.
Did you ever go in and out of rehab?
So no, I had never went to rehab. So I when I first got sober, the process was like I said, it's a little detail oriented, but I first stopped hard drugs. I stopped hard drugs first. Then I stopped all drugs a few months after that. And then I had relapses about every month for a year after that point. So it was about 18 months of in like recovery, but still using at times.
Mhm.
Um, and so what happened was I was sitting in my car. I just snorted my last line of Opana, which is like a really strong pain medicine. And this song came on the radio. It was an Evanescence song. And I could see my daughter as an adult singing me this song. And I could see myself in the other side. It was like I was outside my body, and I could see her singing me this song. I could see myself as like, I looked really rough, and I was like at times laying down on the ground. It was almost like I was either dying or dead or in jail or homeless. I was something where I wasn't able to help her,
Yeah.
give her any support or love. And something just shifted in me, and I said, I have to stop doing these hard drugs. My daughter is going to end up in this really sad place where she's not going to feel supported or loved or cared about, just like when I was growing up, not from my immediate family. Like I had an immediate family that was really loving and supporting, but I just felt that way from society and from being different. And I said, I know my daughter needs me. She needs me so that I can help teach her the lessons that I needed when I was growing up, if she needs those lessons or other lessons. Like I just need to be here for her and make sure that she's going to be a happy, full functioning, adult by the time she reaches adulthood. And so I didn't touch hard drugs after that day, not once. But I woke up the next day thinking, oh, I won't do any drugs at all. And then I ended up smoking weed that same day. So I was still doing, drinking and smoking
Yeah.
and, that kind of thing for the next roughly 16 months after that first initial moment where I was like, no more hard drugs. So that was at least like one turning point. But it took a lot of those turning points throughout my journey, and a lot of help from different organizations and different people and different mentors, and really leaned a lot on my spirituality and meditation practices to really help me through a lot of those struggles.
Yeah. Just want to know that. Um, cool. There's Could you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what it was. Somebody out there outside. Um, it freaks me out once in a while. Um, it's nice if people can shut up. Um, um,
You need a sign to put on your door that says recording session in
yeah,
progress.
I should get one of those play button things. Just sit on the side of the door. Um, let's see. What's your favorite part in the book?
Yeah. So my favorite part, that's really hard, but I would have to say it's actually the story about my drug dealer. So her name's Marie. She helped in the writing the book. So me and my manuscript strategist interviewed her and talked with her and chatted with her and got her insight. And we were able to incorporate that into the chapter that's about her, which is really beautiful. Because when I had originally wrote it, it didn't have her voice in it. And so it's nice because now that chapter is really balanced between my voice and her voice. And it's really an amazing place to start. So it's in the beginning of the book. So we purposely put that chapter, even though it's not chronological, we wanted to put that chapter in the front so people had context to the rest of the book. And my favorite part is that, like I said, by simply her sharing with me, what happened was it was one of those days. I stopped hard drugs about a month before. So I stopped hard drugs in February, and this was in around March, mid-March. She was living with me, so she wasn't just my drug dealer. She was my roommate and my best friend. And she came in my room and jumped up and down on my bed, and she could tell I was like depressed and having a rough time with, being off the hard drugs and, kind of withdrawing and kind of working through all of that. And she said, "This is not how we're going to do this." She jumped up and down like a little kid on my bed, and she got us some pot and some weed. And of course she always had weed. Right. And we sat and started talking, and I was really upset and kind of was working through some emotions. And we started talking about faith, about God. And I didn't even know she was a Christian or identified that way, or kind of grew up in the church, and that she still really was close with God. We had never talked about that. I'd known her for 9 months before that, and it never came up. So from that point, I started talking about faith. And then it was so funny. Up on my wall was a placard from Christmas time, and it said faith. And I left it up there. I took down it was a set of 3 with 3 words like believe, hope, and faith. I took down believe and hope, and only left, actually I took down faith and hope, and only left up believe. So the believe placard is on the wall, and we're talking about God. And I'm like, I don't even know if I believe in God. And as soon as I say that, and as soon as I start to, like, something shifted in me when I said that, like, because I remembered as a little kid feeling connected to God, feeling connected to some type of divine universal energy. In that moment, right when I had that shift in my heart, I looked up and saw believe, that one placard that I left up on the wall.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And something shifted in me, and we started talking about God more. And eventually she left. I went to the bathroom, fell on my knees, asked God to save my life, that I needed him, or her, needed them, however you identify God. But I needed them. I needed that energy. I needed God in my life to help save me, and so that I could do the work I was supposed to do in the world. And through that, the next day I went to go pick up Marie to take her to work. And we were talking about faith. I said, now that I believe, I really do believe. I said, in my heart, I said, but how do I have faith? How do I continue? Once I believe in something, to have faith in something is like the next step, or kind of like belief beyond, beyond belief is faith to me. And so we were talking about faith this whole car ride to work, and dropped her off at work. And the one car in front of me in the state of Kentucky that could have the word license, the only one license plate can have, one letter combination. The one license plate in Kentucky with faith was right in front of me driving. So it was like the sign. And I started from that day receiving signs from God and the universe that I was on the path that I was called to be on. And so I really started working on my spirituality and my faith. And that's how the title became what it is. My drug dealer brought me to God. Marie was this really instrumental part in bringing me back to my own divinity, back to my own God, back to my own version of God. And that's what I also like to tell people when I talk about this part of the book, is that my version of God is way different than the Christian version that I was taught growing up. My God is all loving, kind, compassionate, is this being of light. And I also did the same thing with the word Christian. So people will sometimes ask me what my belief system is. And I'm a spiritualist with a Christian mindset or Christian philosophy or viewpoint. And what that means for me is Christian literally means Christ-like. So Christ to me, Jesus to me, was pure kindness, pure love, pure empathy, pure compassion, pure acceptance, pure love, right? Like that's what Jesus was.
Yeah.
So Christian to me means to embody those elements, to embody love and compassion, empathy, kindness, acceptance, all of those things. So I reclaim that word Christian for myself. You know, I wanted people to know that I identify as Christian because it's a word that I wanted to kind of claim for myself, similar to the word queer that the LGBTQ plus community reclaimed in recent years. You know, when I was growing up and people said the word queer, it was a slur. And over time, LGBTQ people said, we're going to own that word. So now that's a proper word for, like, you can say the queer community, which means the LGBTQ plus community. And they're used sometimes interchangeably, sometimes not, but it's an acceptable, appropriate PC term to use. And so to me, I wanted to do something similar with the word Christian, because I wanted to take the power out of it that people had used to hurt LGBTQ plus people for decades and centuries and millenniums of of hurt and pain and separation from. And so I decided to reclaim that word for myself so I can empower myself that I am a follower of Jesus's love. And to me, that makes me a Christian, regardless of any other things going on biblically or whatever. You know, we can dive into that a little bit as well. I'm not a theologian. I will never claim to be a theologian. But
Did she
I
ever
will.
take you? Did she ever take you to church when you were in that area?
No, we never went to church together. And it took me a long time before I would even step foot in a church. And so I was in part of this meditation group out of the School of Metaphysics, which is based in Windyville, Missouri. I'm like, is it Arkansas or Missouri? It's Missouri, Windyville, Missouri. It's a school. It has different branches all over the United States, particularly the Midwest area. And it teaches like meditation, visualization, and concentration, mindfulness practices. It does teach stuff about world religions and does do some biblical teaching, some dream interpretation. It really runs the gamut of kind of like spiritual or metaphysical teachings. So I was in that school and we were doing an event and it was at a church. And that was probably the first time I had stepped foot in church in a long, long time, probably 15 years, 10 years, 15 years at least. And no, I didn't go with my drug. It took me some time to work through that trauma that I had faced from feeling though I was unloved or unworthy of God's love. And the church was a big proponent of that for me. And now I love church. I go to churches and pray and meditate even when no one's there, and work with churches all the time. And some of my favorite people in this world are rabbis and priests and reverends and pastors and faith leaders of all different belief systems. So, you know, it's taken me a long road to get there because I didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I love all Christians, because it was really hard for me.
Yeah.
But I eventually learned that if I'm going to love myself for who I am, then I have to love everyone for who they are. And if I want to break down cycles of hate, just like Martin Luther King Jr. states, love is the only thing that puts out hate. Like hate cannot put out hate. Only love can do that. Only love can conquer hate.
Yeah.
So I'm paraphrasing obviously what he said because I totally just butchered that quote, but essentially
okay.
hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that, I believe is the more direct quote. But regardless, I started really living that mission and started to, as I loved myself more and more, the more and more I loved other people that were vastly different than me, people at one time that maybe have persecuted me or hurt me or said like, you're LGBTQ, you're going to hell or whatever. I've learned how to just simply love them for where they're at. Doesn't mean I support their behavior or agree with them. It just means simply I've gotten to a place where I know that their opinions and viewpoints aren't my reality. Like that's not to me important what they think, but it is important to love them and be kind to them as much as I can be. And that's been a whole process. And that's like a whole new level of learning how to work in the world, and have a faith and belief system and identify as a spiritual or Christian and still be LGBTQ plus, because there's a lot of people on both sides of that it's a challenge for them to see that. For LGBTQ plus people, you know, I get I've had people tell me like, how can you turn your back on LGBTQ plus people, or how can you believe in God when God's been used to hurt so many people? And I've told those people, I said, but it was man as in humanity. It's humanity who, it was men and women specifically, whoever they were, individuals that decided to use God's word to hurt people. It was not God's word. And so that's where I've had to take time for myself and just really work through all of that. There was so much to work through, and I still every now and again get triggered or have to work through something, or dive deeper into something I felt like I already cleared or worked through all the way. But it is definitely a complicated working with religious trauma, which is actually what I'm getting my doctorate in. I'm doing a leadership studies program from Xavier University here in Cincinnati, Ohio. But my focus in my dissertation is post-traumatic growth for people that have experienced religious trauma within the LGBTQ plus community and ally-based communities. So my goal through doing that work is to better understand religious trauma and how people have grown past having religious trauma. So in my case, I consider myself of having post-traumatic growth. So after my religious trauma, I bounced back to a resilient state. Like Brene Brown talks all about resiliency. If you ever want to learn more about resiliency, check Brene Brown out. She's great. She's a doctor who did a lot of work around resiliency type endeavors. But what happens when you get to a resilient state is that's just a bounce back. Like that's a bounce back to normalcy is what some people would call it. But post-traumatic growth is beyond that. So it's not just getting back to a place where you're like, oh, I'm okay with life. I like myself. I love myself. But it's like to this next level of now I want to share what I've learned with other people, or I've grew past, past where I was. Like I was here before and now I'm here and I understand things differently. I'm able to love all people, including myself or whatever. But like there's a growth beyond just resiliency. So that's what my focus of study is on academically. And it really ties into my story and really ties into my passions of wanting to help build bridges between LGBTQ and faith-based communities.
Well, that's a lot, but that's good though. What you're saying. Let's see what we have on. There's a lot you sent me. Let's see.
That we can talk about, if you want. National Coming Out Day was on Monday, so
Yeah.
October 11th.
Yeah.
And I can share a little bit of my story with that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that.
Yeah. So it's timely. It makes sense. So on Monday's National Coming Out Day, that's something I never heard of when I was a kid. I never heard National Coming Out. I don't think that was around then. I guess we could look up and see when it started.
I thought they said something about Natural Girl Day, but that's the only thing I saw.
National Coming Out Day is the 11th. So it is national. There's so many. It's National LGBTQ History Month. It's obviously Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's so many months. I looked up what October is the month of, and it was like everything. It was like a list of 100 things, literally. Some of them were really funny. Like one was like National Toilet Repair Month or something. I'm not even kidding. Look it up. Toilet Bowl Repair Month is what it was called. So anyway, there's a lot of different months, but it is National Coming Out Day on October 11th. So growing up, I never heard of that. I didn't really even know what coming out was until I was probably a teenager, like 10 or 11. And so I didn't even know that was like an option for me. I didn't know how to express that I was different. I had finally decided to come out. I came out to myself first, probably when I was 8 or 9 years old. By the age of 10, really solidified that and really knew my identity. And then by the time I was 13, I was ready to share it, but I was so scared. So I went a whole year without telling anybody because I couldn't find the right person that I'd built a relationship or friendship with that I thought would understand me. And I'd had friends, friends that were my friends since I was a little kid, 8 to 10 years. And I still didn't feel comfortable coming out to them. But I had one friend in particular and her name was Megan. And me and Megan, I snuck out to my mom's car, got on the cordless phone at the time. I don't know if anyone remembers those house phones,
Oh
but had a
yes.
real house phone, and went out to the car, snuck on there, and yeah, I told her what was going on. I said, I'm scared to tell anybody about this. I'm really, really scared. And she was like, it's okay. And when I came out, she said, yeah, like, that's cool. I love you for who you are. But she said one other thing. She said, but the church doesn't always agree with that, because she was part of a really Catholic community. Her parents and her parents and her went to a Catholic church, and then she went to one of the most prestigious like co-ed Catholic schools in our area. And it was just such a hard moment for me, because as I received like this love and blessing from a friend who was supporting me, I also received all of this religious condemnation from a whole group of people just simply by that statement. And it wasn't her intention to hurt me in that moment, I don't believe. Actually, I know, because I talked about it with her later on. It was just that she was just processing, that like she thought it was okay, but why didn't the church think it's okay? But my biggest takeaway from that was, wow, there's more people that don't accept you. Like your whole Southern Baptist Church of Christ, Southern Church of Christ family doesn't accept you, or wouldn't accept you if you came out. But now you have the whole Catholic Church. And I guess I hadn't thought about that, because I had a few Catholic members in my family on one side, but they were always pretty accepting and loving. And so I didn't really think about Catholicism as being also this was what, 18 years ago or something, now 17 years ago, which was a much more conservative 17 years ago even than it is now, but definitely wasn't accepting or affirming at that time of most Catholic churches, and I guess the whole institution via the Pope at that time wasn't really accepting until our later Pope now, who seems to be more open to loving and supporting and affirming LGBTQ people. But like I said, I'm not a theologian, and I'm not a religious scholar, so I stay out of that piece a lot. But I do want to share at least how that trauma affected me. So what I am more of an expert in is trauma. And so what I can tell you is it made me feel so cruddy about myself. It made me feel so low and little. And it made me feel like I was unworthy of love. And that was really hard. And so then I didn't come out again for another couple years. I waited, and I came out to another person. Actually, right around that time I came out to Megan, I came out to another friend, but we shortly after kind of dissolved our friendship and weren't really close. And I don't believe, she told anybody or anything. She probably didn't say anything to anybody. She probably just didn't really care or think much about it. But I came out to my third person, which was a couple years later. It took me a couple years to build up the courage to tell another friend, and I told her, and it was funny because her response was like Megan's, but even more. She's like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I that's awesome. I'm so happy for you." And then she's like, "I'm just sad because I was in love with you." So her response was, less about church or anybody like that. And she even said, like, God loves you just the way you are. And that was like the
Yeah.
first time I had ever heard that. And from somebody that there also wasn't like a religious stigma or situation around. And so that was like really powerful to hear that from somebody. Not just like, I think God loves you just the way you are. It was like, God loves you just the way you are. You were made just the way you are. And I stayed in the closet for a good while. I eventually was dating my daughter's mother, came out to her a few months into our relationship. We stayed together for years. We got engaged. We unexpectedly had the best blessing of our lives come into the world. That's Harper. And
Yeah.
shortly after Harper was born, I started using hard drugs. I had stopped all drugs for a few months, including weed and everything. And I started smoking weed again, and I started hard drugs. And then we eventually separated. And then I eventually came out as well, to everyone at that time. And the thing was about coming out is I thought, oh my gosh, now that I'm out, I can it's going to be so amazing. I'm going to have all this support and love and kindness from people, and everyone's going to understand me. And I noticed that when I first came out, in my experience, I did not have a super supportive LGBTQ plus connection to community. So I think I really found these people in the community that sometimes either pulled me down, or, we fed off each other's trauma and hurts. And I fell more into drug addiction and more into kind of these suicidal thoughts and ideas. And I pulled farther away from myself even. So after I came out, you think I would be able to say, I feel more like me than ever. And it was the opposite. I felt like I didn't know who I was. And it was because I was, there's obviously reasons why I was on these drugs. I had this whole new group of friends that, I was really just partying with and self-destructing with. And I also had never been a part of the LGBTQ plus community. I didn't know what to expect or how to do it. I knew growing up, I knew like 2 LGBTQ plus people that I knew were in the community. When I came out, I knew the friends I'd made. And I feel like my biggest advice to like people that are thinking about coming out or are newly out or in their coming out process is just to find an organization that can support you, a group of friends that can support you, a faith-based organization that's affirming. And what that means, so when an organization's affirming, it means that they love and accept you and think that you are perfect being LGBTQ plus just the way you are. So that's different than a church that says we're welcoming. That means they welcome everyone. That means you can come in the door and we're going to let you sit there and put offering in the offering plate or whatever. But a
Yeah.
church that's affirming means that they love you just as you are. And they think being LGBTQ is completely cool if that's who you are. That's what all they care about.
Yeah.
That you feel loved and welcomed and accepted for who you are. So, it's about, when you first come out, it's about finding those organizations, be it a faith-based organization, an LGBTQ plus nonprofit, support groups, virtual support groups. Now there's Zooms online, there's peer support groups, there's mentorships, there's counseling, there's one-on-one, there's tons of organizations doing great work now. The Trevor Project, It Gets Better Project, the Love Is Project. I mean, there's just like countless projects that are doing amazing work around helping people come out. The HRC obviously does great work in that area. Your local Pride organization will be a good resource for you as well to connect with. The LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce for each city or nationally. I mean, there's just countless resources, but I didn't know that. So when I came out, I was like thrown to the wolves, essentially, and I ended up being a wolf. And no, but I ended up spiraling. I went into this place
Yeah.
just spiraling out of control, and that's when eventually I had that moment in the car where I saw my daughter singing to me, and I was like, I have to stop this hard drug stuff. And then a month later, I reconnected with my version of God via my drug dealer and friend and roommate, Marie. And then from there, had this journey of discovery, not just in recovery, but through mental health things, through LGBTQ plus things. And so, yeah, everyone's journey is so different and individual. And that's why I really recommend getting connected with some type of resource. You can connect with some resources on my website, which is ryanjosephAllen.com. You can connect with similar resources on Love Must Win's website. So, and during my recovery and when I was a couple years into sobriety, I helped form a nonprofit with a couple other co-founders called Love Must Win. So you can go to lovemustwin.org. Essentially what that organization does is it helps implement love, kindness, and acceptance-based initiatives into our communities through all kinds of different programming. Some are recovery-based. We have an HIV program. We have an arts-based program, a spiritual-based program. We have a university-based program. We have a rural area program that deals with like rural youth. And we also have some other programming. My favorite program is called Hearts and Hugs, where we've went to places where there has been some type of travesty, so my biggest example of this, we went to Pulse 3 times. So we went for the 1 year and the 2 year Pulse memorials, as well as one time in the middle, and offered up our Hearts and Hugs project. So it's a handwritten heart with a message from a stranger to a stranger, and then a hug from a stranger to a stranger. So you have 2 acts of kindness at one time from two different people to give into a person. And it's like this really cool experience, especially if you can get that person to hug you for about 20 seconds or so, and you start releasing that oxytocin, which is like that feel good connection chemical to make you feel connected. It really helps in growing and healing. So we have a lot of different programs that are all around different things. And, just excited to continue that work. And recently we have had a new executive director step in. I was the executive director for about 5 or 6 years. And we have a great new executive director who is leading up the organization. And I'm kind of just sitting here helping guide along the way and working the Hearts and Hugs program is what I'm the director of now. So getting to kind of work my on the ground passion with giving hearts and hugs to people and just helping them heal through kind of traumatic experiences. And or we also do celebratory events, so like prides, or we go to other events in the area, that are like, we do a suicide walk usually. We do the sexual and domestic violence march. We do Transgender Day of Remembrance and Visibility. We're just to be there to offer hugs and love to people, encouraging messages kind of in a time of either celebration or that kind of advocacy piece on making sure that people understand that they're loved just the way they are.
So when you were saying you were coming out, but what was it hard to come out to your parents at the time?
Well, I came out to my mom a little bit before I came out to everyone else. Harper's mom was still pregnant with Harper, and we had gotten this big fight, me and Harper's mother. And I wanted to come out to Harper's aunt, so Harper's mom's sister. And Harper's mom was like, that's not going to happen. That's embarrassing. You can't do that. And so I got in this real big fight with her, and I was like, that's not fair to tell me that I can't come out when I want to come out, and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually she's like, well, if you want to come out to my sister so bad, you should just come out to your mom, and I'll call her and we could tell her together. And like kind of forced me into it. But at some point it was such a blessing because I called her, I cried. I said, I have to tell you something. She said, what? I said, I'm gay or bisexual or whatever. That's literally my words. I said, I'm gay or bisexual or whatever. And she goes, okay, like no one cares. Like we love you just the way you are. You're amazing. We don't care. We never cared if you were LGBTQ plus or gay or whatever. Like that doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And so I made her promise though not to tell a single soul. That's how in shame I was. I had so much shame around being LGBTQ plus. I said, absolutely, you cannot tell a single soul. And I believe she upheld that and didn't tell anybody. And then a few months later, I was coming out to everybody, so it was fine. It worked out. Other family members were just like, yeah, that's fine. My favorite coming out moment was when I got to talk to my grandma about it. So my grandma knew I came out and all of that, but I didn't have a one-on-one conversation with her. And I went down to visit her, and she looked me in the eyes and she said, God made you just the way you were, and you are loved just the way you are. And this is coming from my grandparents who growing up were pretty rough about LGBTQ things and other things as well. I remember my grandma once said, like, I would never vote for a woman. They can't do the same things men could do. And I was like 7 years old, and I was like, that's not true. Anything a woman can do, a man can do, or anything a man can do, a woman can do, and vice versa. I said, that's not true. But I heard like the LGBTQ stuff, like gay people go to hell, or like I had a cousin named Billy who they would always say things about. And that was really hurtful for me because I would hear them say that and then they would be nice to his face. But also would have like a different energy to them around him, and they would say things, and it was just really harmful. But those are the same grandparents that literally said later on, years later, right? God loves you and made you that way, just the way you are. So to hear that from somebody who was like instrumental in my like religious trauma growing up, then coming around saying the opposite was really beautiful, and it really helped me. But the other piece of that is just because they said that later in life doesn't mean that I didn't experience that trauma. That trauma was still burned into my neuro pathways in my brain. That's how trauma works. It like is embedded in your neuro pathways and your belief systems. And to change those takes a lot of work and time and energy and effort and therapy or whatever, thinking differently. As you think differently, they wire back to however you want to think. But in that moment, that trauma created these pathways that said, like, you're not good enough, you're not loved for who you are, God doesn't love you, you are crap, pretty much. And then that led to all of these other self-destructive behaviors because I learned to hate myself. And so by the time I was, a teenager, I learned to hate myself. Then I was doing drugs, and, drinking and doing drugs and, cutting myself and, had suicide attempts and all of that. Really based around a lot of the trauma that I endured was religious trauma from that family. So just because 20 years later, well, whatever, how many years later, 20 years later from them saying things like that, they said the opposite to me and said, God loves you just the way you are, was beautiful, but also didn't change the fact that what they said when I was growing up. And so my biggest piece of like my nuggets from this area of like takeaways would be like, just be really careful how you talk to people when they're coming out. Be careful what you say day to day. Be careful, how you share what your thoughts and feelings are, when it could hurt someone else. So if you're saying someone's going to hell or God doesn't love you because of this or whatever, maybe to just rethink the words that you're using because they're really hurtful or can be hurtful and really lead to long-term trauma and long-term issues. And on top of that, just from a philosophical position, like my God is like a God that loves everybody. And, I read more in the Bible about not judging others than judging people, and to look at your own splinter in your eye and or look at your own plank in your eye, not the splinter in someone else's. So I think my biggest takeaway is just to be careful what you say, and also maybe to like reevaluate the way that you might be judging someone, even if it's from a place of trying to help. Because in the end, if you're gonna like make that kid feel like they're gonna want to kill themselves, I mean, that's what happened to me eventually. It was literally because I heard those things was one of the main reasons that I hated myself, which led to me wanting to hurt myself or in my own life. Maybe just think about that your words have consequences and your actions have consequences, and just to be mindful that, the God that I see and know is, and everyone's God is different. Everyone has the right to believe whatever they want from a Christian perspective or any other religion or faith-based perception.
Yeah.
Have a right to believe whatever they want, but you don't have a right to hurt people with what you believe. And if you're hurting people with what you believe, then it's time to reevaluate what you believe and or how you're showing that belief to others. So you might keep whatever belief you want to your core essence and your belief system. That's fine, but just be careful about pushing that belief out to other people if it's going to be hurtful. And that's really my number one, because I think that's what my grandma noticed 20 years after the fact. That like, oh my gosh, I had said all these things about LGBTQ plus people or gay people. And it wasn't even every day. It's not like she was like she wasn't at one of those people at pride parades with a sign, a picket, with anti-gay slurs on it or anything. It was just that she had made comments here or there. The whole family did. But she noticed that and said, oh my gosh, I better reconcile my behavior from the past and apologize in this way of like reminding Ryan that he's wonderful and beautiful and loved by God just the way he is. And that was really important because that's helped me on my faith journey to do a lot of like healing and reconciliation around Christianity. Even to a point, right, where I decided to reclaim the word Christian for myself and, walk into churches and do things with faith-based organizations on a consistent basis and really love Jesus in a way that I found to love Jesus as like a guide for me, as my main kind of guide through life, which is really what biblically the Bible says too. So anyway, I don't get too much into that, but I do just want to say, just to be really mindful of the words that you speak, because they can be harmful and words can hurt. It's that saying, when you're growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me, is really inadequate because it's not true for most people. Sticks and stones will hurt your bones, and words will or could create a lot of trauma, and that trauma then manifests as addictions, as mental health issues, with physical ailments. I mean, like literally, like words can create all kinds of problems for people. So just to be aware of your words and be kind, because like at the end of the day, like if God was sitting in front of you, or whatever your divine leader, whoever that may be, sitting in front of you, like I don't know one divine leader that I can think of that doesn't preach love and kindness and compassion and empathy. So I think regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of LGBTQ supporter, not supporter, it doesn't really matter. You should be.
That's been on my heart for a while.
Well, that's number one. So the number one is just to love them. So if it's been on your heart, it means that you love them, and you care about them, and you want them to be happy and healthy, and heard and seen and valued and validated and all those good things. You want that for them. So that's number one. If you're feeling into your heart, then that's a good place to start. So
To you, I'm gonna I guess I'm just gonna pick out some questions, and then when you wanna if you, because it's right now it's 8 o'clock, but let's see on here.
yeah, ask me one or two more, and then we'll wrap it up whenever it feels right.
Okay. So where can people find you at? Like I guess on social media, or I guess you really talked about that before, but
Yeah, well, you can connect with me always on my website. So if you need to send me a message or whatever, um, it's Ryan Joseph Allen, ALLEN.com, or my drug dealer brought me to God.com. You can find me on most social media just by Ryan Joseph Allen, including like LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, but I don't use TikTok very often. But you can find all of those links on my website. So you can find all my social media links. I have some my personal social media links, I believe, and then also some of my more like business oriented links. You can also find the links to like Love Must Win's website. You can find a lot on there. So I would say the number one resource is just the website. If you just want to remember one thing, that's it. RyanJosephAllen.com, and you can get to all the rest of them from there. And you can purchase the book on Amazon. So you can go to ryanonamazon.com/now, and that will actually take you right to the book. Or you can just type in "My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God" on Amazon, or go to my website, and all of those places will take you right to the book. If you're wanting to buy it from a different retailer, Target has it right now. Let's see, who else has it? Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, some textbook companies picked it up. The audiobook comes out this time next month. So November 15th, the audiobook will be out on Audible. And that should be awesome. Greg Barnett is narrating my book, which I'm super excited about. Yeah, so that if you're not a big reader and you're like, I want to read it, but I don't really want to read, I totally understand that, because I'm not a huge reader. I'd way rather listen to a book than read it. So that is going to be an option that gets launched in about, like I said, just about a month from now, which should be really exciting. So,
in November.
did I say October?
I think so.
Okay, November 15th, not October. This is October. So next month, about a month from now, November, did it again. November 15th or 16th is the launch date. So I'm shooting for the 15th, but might be the 16th.
Could be one of those days.
Yeah, and you can find, and I'll put more information on my website and all my social media and stuff as it launches, to keep everyone updated. So
I was reading it on what is the other one? Uh not the hard book, the other one.
paperback,
Yeah, or not paperback, but it's on
uh,
the phone.
the ebook.
Yeah. So what reading it from there first, and then I'm gonna buy the audio.
Yeah, well, and the ebook right now is I think 9.99, so it's the cheapest option. Paperback is usually 19.99, and hardcovers 29.95. But each of those versions comes with a 40-page workbook that follows along with the book. So the first part of the workbook kind of dives into some religious trauma, but also just trauma and familial traumas endured in earlier in life. And then the latter part of the book takes those traumas and then gives you outlets of or avenues on how to heal, through like mindfulness and meditative practices. And those range from like anything from like a daily gratitude exercise, to different meditations, to different ways to visualize and concentrate, and really kind of help people work through some of those triggers and traumas from earlier in life. It's not by all means like gonna be the end all be all of your healing and growth, but hopefully it sets you on the right path to find different avenues of healing and growth.
Yeah.
And my hope is that peer support groups pick it up or whatever. And so that workbook is also for free on my website. It won't make as much sense, obviously, if you don't have the book in some version, but it's free to download on my website as well as in the back of the printed books and the back of the ebook. I will say, if anyone has a financial burden and they're like, I really just can't afford 9.95 right now, which like I've been there, I write about it in my book. Um, there was a time when I literally bought Harper Christmas presents. This was right after getting sober, and I literally had not a penny to my name. So I had to like eat my roommate's food, and like my grandma gave me some extra food. I like didn't even have money for food. And so there's been times I've been there, so I understand. So I want to say that I will offer that book for free. So just go on my website, send me a message on there, or you can email me at ryan.allen@lovemustwin.org. Email me or message me on my website, and I can get you a free ebook copy, so a digital copy, because I don't want anybody not to have access to it. Some local libraries have already picked it up, for the greater Cincinnati area where I live. So the Hamilton County Library bought 10 copies, and other libraries have bought some copies. So you might be able to find it online, on what libraries' websites. But like I said, if you have a barrier to getting it, let me know, because I just want to make sure it's accessible to people, regardless of the financial piece to it. So, yeah, hopefully that's helpful to people in different, just different parts in your
Situation.
journey, especially people in recovery. A lot of times, like we've really, I had to work real, and I'll speak from my own experience, but like I really had to rebuild my life in every way, shape, or form, especially financially, after I got sober. So anyway, just wanted you to know I'm here for you, and I want to help guide and love and just share my story. And that's what really makes the book interesting, I think, is because it is a memoir, but it has a lot of self-help hybrid aspects involved. And then it has the workbook, which is obviously another way to help kind of heal and grow on the journey too.
So the last question I had was, what why did you write this book? Was it just for you, or was it just for somebody else?
Well, I had this idea a couple years ago, and I was like, and I told a friend about it. And my friend was like, Ryan, I think that your story and the title, I already had the title of it then, is really powerful and would help people. I know. And he was like, I know that you shared parts of your story with me and it helps me. And I said, well, you're just saying that, you're being nice, you're my friend. And he's like, no, seriously. And so I went on a trip by myself, out of the country, And he had dropped me off at the airport, and he said, you need to work on your book while you're there by yourself. And I said, I'm on vacation. I don't want to work on a book. Well, on that vacation, I ended up recording, so audio recording the whole book. It was 18 hours of recording. And then I sat on it for about a year and didn't do anything with it. And so then I got the message one day when I was hiking in the woods, like I was doing some kind of like introspective work at like what I wanted to do and how I wanted to live my purpose, not just in the nonprofit work I was doing, but also in other work. And so I was really guided to go ahead and start the publishing process, but I knew I needed a manuscript strategist first to kind of help me put it all together and get it moving and grooving and make it into something. So I found a manuscript strategist who was just amazing and really helped me build the book out and helped it make sense and helped me build the workbook, and really just couldn't have happened without her. If anybody is looking to write a book and is like, I don't know where to start, let me get you a hold of some of my friends. Fern Pesson was my manuscript strategist. And then my publisher is Publisher Purpose Press, PYP Press, which Jen T. Grace is the CEO of. And she was just really adamant on helping me get started. And there were also a couple people along the way, my friend Paula and my friend Brett, who really were like, you have to do this. Like, this is divine work. This is God's work that was put onto your plate. And I got that calling too. So it was like really listening to where I was called to go. And that's really what I've been doing in life since I got sober. It's just listening to where I've been kind of called to go to and work on, and how to help people and how to help myself learn and grow so I can help other people then learn and grow as well. So by learning the tools that I've learned, my hope is that I'm able to give those tools to other people so they can help themselves grow and learn and expand. So, it was really a big process. And I, at times, I literally, you can ask my partner, I sat there and cried a couple of times and cried with my friends. And like, it was hard to put this together and relive all of it, because the first part of the book really dives into my journey as a child and teenager and young adult. And the latter part of the book really dives into how I kind of had that moment of post-traumatic growth where I grew past my trauma and what that looked like. And that's where the workbook component also goes hand in hand. So yeah, it was really just people encouraging me to follow my dreams and to use my voice. And I've learned how to do that more and more every single day in the process. So I'm so thankful for all the people that really pushed me, sometimes kindly and sometimes not so kindly, sometimes a little like, you got to do this, and just really am so grateful for all of the people that helped it come to life. And it was such a huge team. It was so many people, I can't even list them off right now. There would be 20 people that were really, really vital in the whole process. So it takes a village, as they say. And it definitely took a lot of time and energy and love. But I think the story really is powerful. So I hope that people pick it up and read it, or give it to the pastor of a church that they think they might need it, or a family member of an LGBTQ person, or a person in recovery, or a person, that struggled with mental health, because all of those things are touched on in the book, and the workbook that goes along with it is helpful in navigating some of that too. So I'm super, super thankful for you talking with me too, Daniel, and helping spread some love with me. And I love that.
Well, you can always call me or message me as well. But thanks for doing this with me, though.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I am so excited just to continue our friendship. And thank you for giving my voice an outlet to amplify it. And I just appreciate all that you do, and all the love you put into the world through all the work that you're doing as well. So,
oh, thanks. It means a lot. Well, have a good night, and I'll let you know when this is up. And
all right. Thanks, Daniel. I'm sending you so much love.
oh, thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.